Oh, here we are, guys. Here we are on the ninth episode of GPT with me. I'm away. I'm not in my usual studio, as you could sort of plainly see. Let me see if I can try to encapsulate just the background that I've got going on here. I'm up in Chicago, and thankfully so, as I had not expected us to be in the same geolocation, but it just happens to be. My boy Leonard Rodman's here, and he is going to be talking to us about Midjourney later. He's going to be showing us the ropes and helping you to actually become an artist yourself through the use of these programs. So, um, yeah, that's what you guys can expect today. I'm not in my usual studio. I'm up traveling, so we're going to be back later today, and then things will be normal, I think, uh, next week for the next couple weeks, and then I'm out again. So I'll be broadcasting from another part of the world, and hopefully that works better than this did today because we got set up in about 8 minutes ago, I think. So Leonard, how you doing, man? How's it going today?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm glad you managed to get your device up. Nick and I were having a little bit of a panic back and forth where he was like, "Oh shit, I can't get on. My computer won't boot. This isn't good." But here we are. So we made it. We're good.
Always something, man. There's always an adventure. So one of the things that I wanted to go over, which is it's right up your alley, so this is perfect timing. Um, it kind of crosses over, right? So the big talk or big discussion this past week was what was happening with OpenAI in regards to the lawsuits. And I am so very glad that Sam Altman was so nice enough to point out the absolute idiocy of anybody that's trying to make these claims. Um, because look, when I step back and I think about it, what we're talking about is educating a machine. Okay, like if I could boil it down even more, we're educating a brain. We're just stuffing information into a brain. So then it's like when I step back and I think about it, it's like, okay, well, it's no different than you reading these books on your own, right? So like, and especially nowadays, you don't even need to have money. You almost don't even need to have ID. You can just walk into a library, read whatever books you want to, retain all of that information, and then walk out and do whatever you want to with it. Well, it's the same thing as GPT. It's just that it memorizes infinitely better than you do,
So,
and
so
it
I
can
think
know
that's the
all the
catch,
things.
right? People are scared because it's a computer that has superpowers that they don't have. And
Yes.
I think the biggest fear in all of this is sort of, well, part of it is being left behind, part of it is intellectual property. But I think what scares people the most is just this idea that, like, yeah, this computer can digest a million books. Like, I
Right.
read a lot of books. I probably only read about 2,000 books. Like, that's a lot for a human, but,
Right.
that doesn't compare to ChatGPT. So I think that kind of scares people. I think the intellectual property argument isn't invalid, but I think it's more that we just have to revisit how we look at intellectual property.
Yeah.
I think two ways of looking at it. One possible future is all anyone cares about is their number of followers in an eyeball economy, and so like it doesn't matter if people pirate your stuff because they're still going to follow you and you're going to make money off that.
Hmm.
I think that's probably the way we're going. Um, the other possible way that people talk about is to track every single person's contributions for all of time, and anytime someone generates something, everybody gets like point zero
Pennies.
zero 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 zero
Yeah.
zero 0.001 cents, and they track all of it, and that way the creators actually get compensated. And like, it sounds crazy, and it's a very very small amount of money, but it adds up if like 100 billion people are generating using your name.
And I'm
Um,
wondering if that's what WorldCoin was even meant to be a part of, right? That Altman was trying to push forward.
That was kind of the idea. I think the other idea is something that I've talked about also is just the idea that it's impossible to prove what was made by AI,
Right.
but I think you could prove what was made by a human and have some kind of blockchain to store a ledger of every human made product. Like, how
Hmm.
do you certify it? I don't know. It's some sort of certification scheme, like how they certify coins and comic books and paintings for
Right.
authenticity, right? But you'd have these banks of content made by actual humans, guaranteed to be made by a human. You'd have to pay for it. People would buy that for training data because it looks like maybe, maybe not, but there's a pretty good chance that you need actual human input to train AIs. So
Hmm.
I think that's another potential big market. Is there's going to be artists who are making art for no purpose other than to train AIs with it, and they're going to be
Right.
like, here's 10,000 things that we don't have good pictures of for training. We want you to take a photograph of it. here's 10,000 things we don't have good illustrations of. We want you to go illustrate it, and then we're going to suck it into the AI, and those people will get paid, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully everyone will be happy. We'll see about that.
Don't know how well that's going to go, but you hit on something that's actually perfect, and it's a perfect transition, because when it comes to the detection aspect of it, right? Especially when it comes to written detection, it's out the window. There's no, I have everybody gave up. Everybody gave up at least a month ago. I don't know
Except the
anybody who's
people
still
selling
pursuing
it,
it.
they're telling us it's really accurate.
Good luck. I would love to. I have no problem if you're out there and you're building a detection bot for text, for generative text. Please DM me. I would love to break your shit. Like,
Yeah, that'd
no
be fun. I
problem.
would work with
Yeah,
someone who's doing that just for free. DM us.
yeah, exactly. Like, I would do it just for the giggles. Like, I have no problem. I started doing it when 3.5, no, when 3 dropped. Is when, because I'd seen Jasper. Not, yeah, like not last year, year before, and it was awesome, and it blew me away, and it was so great, and I've never seen anything like it. And then I thought about it, and I'm like, yeah, but now you could just like plagiarize so much stuff, right? You, like, who knows, right? And then GPT dropped, and I'm like, oh, this is a big problem because you just took that Jasper thing, and now this is wide open. So like, you, everybody can use this, and who's going to know that anyone's using this thing? And so now it's like, yeah, okay, we can't do anything with the text, but Deep Blue and Google managed to work out a way to actually stamp images. So now we can actually determine whether something's a digital image or like generated image
Well,
versus.
just their images. But the one problem with that is like I've been working in graphic design for 20 years. I can
Mhm.
defeat any kind of digital watermark in like zero point 0.0 seconds. It's
Yeah, man, what do you think? You know what? That's so perfect. I'm so glad you said that because I used to do graphic design. What do you think of the new beta Photoshop feature for removal? What is your
for
opinion on that?
removal.
Yeah, have you seen that yet?
No, what is there's
Oh
automatic
man,
removal?
download the beta Photoshop. There's a new, instead of like what is it? Instead of patch, like patch tool, or instead of that, a subsect of it is now removal,
Okay.
and you just wave over things like as if you were painting a normal part for exclusion, but it legitimately removes stuff. Like this, the new breed on my hat can just boop, gone, and the color, everything, the lighting will still match the way it would have if it wasn't there anymore. And the only reason I bring it up is because, not that I haven't, I because it's one of those things, like, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. But I have played around with the fact that you can use this tool to immediately remove watermarks, and it is insanely good at it, right?
Well, not
So
only a visible watermark, but what about an invisible watermark, right? Because that I think is what Google's getting at, where they put like a secret
right,
pattern of pixels that you can't see, and that like you hypothetically wouldn't know to remove. But you can get rid of those with like a zero point 0.1 pixel Gaussian blur,
right,
by layering a little bit of noise over your image that's indetectable to the human eye. But yeah, either way, like, I mean, it's certainly ironic if we're using AI to remove the AI watermarks. I'm a huge fan of irony, so I like
right.
that.
It's
Um,
hilarious.
yeah, definitely also check out in Canva. They've had it for even longer, Magic Eraser, which I assume is more or less the same feature.
That's
It's
what it sounds like.
interesting.
Yeah.
So I was like a Photoshop boy, for 20 years. Canva is amazing. Like
Yeah,
I'm
it
not
is.
doing anything super fancy these days, and I'm just trying to trim my budget. And my partner already has Adobe Creative Suite, so I'm like, well, if I really need Photoshop, I'll just go use her laptop.
Yeah.
But yeah, Canva is incredible. Adobe Express also incredible, and it has tools that Photoshop doesn't even have. Um, I've been using Adobe Podcast for audio cleaning, an amazing tool. It makes it sound like you're using like $1 billion microphone. You're just using any microphone at all.
Nice.
But yeah, a lot of these free tools are really impressing me. Another cool one to check out is Microsoft Designer. They're getting in the game
Yep.
with like a Canva clone.
Yep.
Uh,
I've seen it. It's not, theirs is not bad, but it's a lot more I shouldn't even say structured, templated than Canva is. There's a lot like less flexibility, but it's pretty strong. And like the image, what's funny is, at least when it comes to these types of programs, like I like Designer's image generator. It's actually not bad. it's pretty
Yeah.
decent for what it is. Like, especially for like design for logos and stuff like that. Like, it's actually pretty good.
Yeah. What do you think of Ideogram, the text one? I assume you've been playing with that as well.
I have, but so like
The image quality is terrible, but
that's what I was gonna say. Like, for not for nothing, but for guys like us, it's like we already know how to do that stuff the long way around and make it look
well, I
awesome,
could
right?
do it. But for a quickie, like it's
Yes, yeah, that's
awesome.
what I'm saying. Yeah. So I look at it like Firefly, right? Like the text generator on Firefly, like it's very much to me, it's very much the same thing. You're trying to get the same effect. So it's like, all right, it's pretty close, but it's not quite the same as that. But again, it's pretty close. We're only 6 months in, man. We're only 6 months in, and we have the most amazing digital tools we have ever had in the last 30 years. So I don't like anytime I see one of these things and it's like, it's all right. It's like, yeah, but by Christmas it's gonna be amazing. So I get excited just seeing the like, oh, you got started building this thing? Cool, because I could see where it's going to end up. But like the I think one of the bigger pieces of news for me lately has been in relation to not just the copyright aspect of it, but the sort of offshoot story that nobody's really talking about because the whole copyright image aspect came up, the copyright book aspect came up from OpenAI, right? And
They're
that I
getting
don't think
sued
is.
about images too. I posted about that.
Oh, are they?
Yeah.
Wow. I don't like because they don't even have. I mean, let's see. Does Interpreter actually generate, or is
No,
it
not
just because
them
the
getting sued.
model?
Sorry, Midjourney and everyone else is getting sued.
Midjourney. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But OpenAI is actually about to release an image generator, probably
Not
in
surprising.
GPT-5.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would
You're
imagine.
gonna go get it, right?
Yeah. So that's. I mean, when I think about it, it's like, look, either we train these things on data that we have, or we don't have these things, right? Like
Well, the
what?
other
Like
piece of it is like, what if I set out and someone gave me $1 billion to create an ethical AI where I only use stuff with permission? Could I ever catch up to the people who haven't been doing that? No,
no.
right? It's over basically before it started. You know,
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
even
look,
care unless we legislate the crap out of it at a global scale. Quote
right.
unquote unethically trained AI is just where we're at, and we're just going to have to reconceptualize copyright. Frankly, it's about time. Copyright's kind of outdated and outmoded in some ways and stifles, especially technological progress,
Yeah.
where companies just copyright and patent cool shit and then sit on it and don't use it for 20 years. That's not good for technological progress or society. So
It's not good for
we're going to end up
commerce at
with a better
all.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even but that stuff aside, I know that we touched on it a little bit in the post about it. I just find it funny, and I don't know. I wanted to get your opinion on it. I find it funny that people are really not paying too much attention to Steven Thaler, and I was wondering, like, what you think about that whole aspect of things with Davis and whether or not like what he's building is legitimate or whether it's just like I don't want to say clickbait, but let's face it, it's like it is very much the scenario I keep talking about where it's like one guy in his basement building this model out of everybody else's eyesight, and all of a sudden it does some really crazy shit that nobody was thinking about until it happened, right?
Yeah. Which person is this? Steve, you said?
Stephen Thallis, he put together Dabus, which is this language
Oh, that
model.
one. I saw that one. Yeah, so
Yeah,
there's a lot of fear that people like. I don't think Dabus like it's claims that it's AGI. I don't think it's AGI. But what if someone did buy a bunch of processors, build an AGI in their basement, a like artificial general intelligence, which is basically like an AI that's at the level of humans and like I don't know, certified to be at the level of humans by whoever does that. Right?
yeah,
How do we know? But so yeah, say someone did that and they were ill-intentioned and they vetted a bunch of textbooks about like sowing chaos on social networks and building bad things and hacking. It could cause a lot of damage and trouble.
yeah.
Really, the only way that governments would be able to detect something like that or stop it would be tracking purchases. So if someone's buying a bunch of these and they don't own an AI startup, that's
Right,
weird.
right.
And also, someone's using like an insane amount of power, like $100,000 worth of power a month.
That's
Like
what Altman was talking about. which
right?
makes perfect sense. Like actually, like legitimately monitoring the grid for excess power draw.
I'm sure the government's always doing it, looking for like Russian and Chinese spies or whatever who are
Something.
up to no good. Or up
Yeah.
to good, I don't know, but our government's gonna put them either way. So
All right, let's spin this ship in a positive direction and on a
yeah,
not that it's negative stuff, guys. The stuff that we talk about, you gotta let's put it this way. I know that some people think about it that way. They're like, oh, it's so negative. Don't talk about like what the bad stuff about AI. You have to. You have to start thinking about it. You have to have these discussions because if you don't think about it, by the time you do, it's too late. The stuff is moving too fast to be able to just sit back and wait and well, we'll talk about it next month. And if that even occurs, like no, it will be beyond your doorstep by the time you think about that. But the crux and purpose of today is for you guys to actually be a little bit more creative, to learn how to be more creative with yourselves, either professionally, personally. I love watching everything that John and you and Arzu and Duncan and so many other people do on LinkedIn. Um, and it's awesome to me because of the fact that it's not, I mean, not just you guys in particular, so to speak, but most of the art that I see out there, the majority of it is non-artists. It's non-artists. This isn't like people talk about like, oh, it's cheap art, cheap, easy way to create art. It's like you don't like you guys are not in the community because the communities I'm in, these people are super technical about what they're doing. They are super locked in on art and like on art terms. They're learning about a whole new field that they've never even thought possible and didn't and thought, stuff that you would think you'd have to spend years and degrees and money and all this kind of stuff. And instead, I give you Leonard. So, without further ado, sir, if you want to, you go ahead, you take the reins, you
yeah,
let
absolutely.
us watch your magic.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit and then I'll do some screen share. But really, I think the words are more interesting than the images, even when we're talking about image gen.
Hmm.
And I think that's an important point that you kind of alluded to just now is that um, what really makes for good images is not just typing in, and I'll show this, like a dog, right? Like it'll make a cool dog, and like compared to what we thought of as being possible a few years ago, like that's a damn good dog, right? Very impressive.
Hmm.
But I think what really makes the art of this is composition, it's lighting, it's the thinking and ideation process behind creating the images. And so I don't want to deter anyone by saying that, but even people who I see who are doing this generative art who aren't, quote unquote formal artists like myself or John have been doing something creative and for years and years and years. And I would say yeah, there's some new dogs, but like the best people making videos and images right now are all people who have like 20, 30, 40 years of experience in graphic
Yep.
design, videography, photography, creative directors, right? Because these people have that experience. And I think that's something people aren't really realizing when they talk about these AIs. They say, oh, anyone can just sit down, it doesn't require skills, it's going to take my job. It just requires different skills, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those skills are transferable. They're the same skills we already had. So, people who were making videos before are going to be making videos again. They're just going to be doing
Yep.
it with AI. And then a
Yep.
couple of people who refuse to do it with AI, we'll just never hear from those people again. They'll just drop off the list. But yeah, everyone who's willing to adapt, I think, people's jobs are safe.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so let me start by talking a little bit about what I've been doing in terms of making guides for Midjourney. So I've been creating what I'm calling style guides, and the idea is that, excuse me, inherent in Midjourney or any other model, there's just different kinds of styles that the model has been trained on, but it's not, since it's just trained on a bunch of data, no one has a list of what it knows well and what it knows poorly until you try it out. So you used to try different things out. For example, I tried running a bunch of Pokemon through Midjourney. I don't know if you know about Pokemon, but it doesn't know the difference between ghastly and coughing and kind of merged the two of them together. One's a ghost and one's a poison cloud. They're both purple sphere looking things. So I could see how a computer could get confused, or maybe there was some mistagging there. But that's an example of something that's not really well covered in the algorithm, meaning I ran
Hmm.
some tests. I got a bunch of stuff that looks not like Pokemon, and therefore the algorithm and the model are not well trained on that, and so it doesn't make for a good style versus the things that I generally release are things that did work out well. So, for example, it doesn't necessarily have to be an artistic style, right? It could be the style of an artist. People get touchy about that. It could be, um, the style of a particular era, or
Mm.
something like impressionist paintings. But it can really be anything that exists in the training data set. So, for
And would
example,
you
yeah,
would you also agree that people could, because I try to get this through to people a lot, that like these things, they're different tools, right? So like even when it comes to uh, art generating programs, like there are like Midjourney is, Leonard's gonna say the same thing. We've been using this stuff for a while. I can say Midjourney is the best overall, right? It is the Adobe of the
okay.
image generation world, right?
But there are
Um,
strengths and weaknesses. Some of the others can do stuff
exactly.
they can't do.
Right. And like in my opinion, if you want to do like anime stuff, you should probably be using Leonardo. It is almost
Really,
in
better
yeah,
than
it is.
better than Niji.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
I mean, so it's one of those things where they have four different anime models. They're not
Mhm.
like one better than the other or versioned out. It's like four completely different styles of anime. Like they kind of, and I like that. Different image generators have done that. It's like, okay, Midjourney, you're doing like the kit and caboodle. We're going to focus on just this niche, right?
Mhm.
And it's great because like just for those images, it's awesome. You can do general stuff like with Midjourney, but anyway, the point I was trying to get at and what I was going to ask you was, what do you think about? Because I think that it's a good way or a good resource to go about it, mixing the two where maybe you know what you're doing with the image, maybe you have an idea, but then you use GPT and you put that idea into GPT. And again, like you were talking about ideation and say like, hey, this is the idea I have for an image. What might make this better? Or what might make this more visually interesting or something like just to even kick your brain a little bit further into like what I should put into this.
Yeah, so I definitely use ChatGPT sometimes for exploring. I think the one minus is that since ChatGPT was made before these image generators, it doesn't really know about them. Hopefully, in the next ChatGPT, they'll add to the training set and teach it how to write Midjourney and Stable Diffusion prompts, which would be cool. Because the main thing it'll do is, you even if you can tell it like everything, you can teach it all of it, and it can do it, but that requires a lot of pre-prompting. You can tell it describe an image for me for image generation software, and it'll give it to you. The main caveat there is it gives you really long descriptions, and Midjourney in particular, and less so, but still there. Stable Diffusion, they have cutoffs, so they only do so many terms, and then they just kind of crap out and stop doing more words, right? So like if you ask for a million things, it's going to do like the first 20 words, and then everything after that gets ignored. And I can show that as well when we demo. But
Mhm.
I do think it's good for ideation. I've had the main cool way I've done that is I tell GPT to generate personas for me, so potential audience members, marketing lingo basically.
Yeah.
So create some of these potential audience members, and then create a description of a unique image designed to delight, entertain, cause them to follow me for each persona.
Nice.
Then you run
Nice.
those images through and sort of see what you get. Some of them just turn out kind of like boring crap because it'll be like, oh, this guy's a soccer dad. He wants to see a picture of a dad playing catch with his son, and it'll make that image, but it'll be like the most boring and uninspired image just because the
Mm,
prompt is so generic that it describes.
yeah.
Again, that just goes back to it not knowing how to prompt for images, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I think the most important thing is to know that what model you're working in, how they're a little bit similar or different. So you mentioned Leonardo. That comes with more layers usually. So you'll have like
Yeah.
a base model, then you also have something called a LoRa, LORA, and then you
Yep.
can have other things. You can put a lot more negative prompts into Stable Diffusion, which is I think kind of nice.
Hmm.
Um, but my finding with negative prompts, and a negative prompt is where you say like, "Don't give me 22 toes," because people don't have that,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Or don't give me three legs. People don't have that. The more stuff you put in the negative prompt, the more stuff it's going to unintentionally exclude. So I'm not a huge fan of negative prompting because I think it throws the
Hmm.
whole model off. And kind of a way, it's because of a piece of the way the model works is that it takes all those words, it puts them together, And then at the end of the day, it turns that into a number, right? So if you add more words or subtract words from your prompt, even if those words are nonsense and potentially get ignored, they throw off that number and change it, and it's
Dirty
called a
data.
GP, right? So you end up with slightly different results. I think negative prompting works a little bit better in Stable Diffusion and Midjourney. It like really, really, really throws things off, so I almost never ever use it. But is
I've
there?
only ever used it in Midjourney once to take, and to your point, to take people out of an, to remove people from an image it was generating.
Yeah, no
And
people is a good one.
yeah, but that's the thing, is because it was a flat illustration that I was doing, it actually ended up having to be no characters, because at that
Okay.
point it's a different format, right? So it's not people in a photo, it's characters in an illustration.
It should have still figured it out. It didn't do it.
It didn't. No, I said like no people, no persons, like no adults, and it like they just kept putting them in there, and I was like, okay, no characters, boom, perfect. Like, all right,
Okay. I mean, maybe if you had put no adults and no children, it would have figured it
could
out or
be.
something like
Yeah,
that. But so that goes to show just the importance of experimentation. Like the most that I've learned with this or any of the other IT stuff or graphic design stuff I've been doing for years and years and years, you just play around and screw around and try and do fun stuff. Like I work at an IT company and we like do serious stuff, but we also like fool around a little while we're doing AI stuff, and like that's how you have fun, right?
yeah,
So someone programmed into, we have like a call simulator we're working on where ChatGPT calls and it pretends to be a customer with a broken printer or whatever, and then you have to like collect its info and like go through it, and then it records it, and then it grades you. And this eventually will be part of like our testing and training at our company, so that should be cool.
oh, of course.
But anyway, one of the C-suite people stuck in there like Charlie the Clown is the name of the customers. It's like this, hello, this is Charlie the Clown. People were like, hell no, hell no.
No, thank you. Not
Already
touching.
creepy
No,
enough. No, thank
not
you.
taking that one.
But
Oh my
yeah,
god.
just screwing around and having fun with it is kind of, I think, how you explore and find the coolest stuff. So yeah.
Mhm. Getting out, helping to break out your inner child. It's always the best way to learn how to do things.
So why don't I show a little bit live in Midjourney, if that
Let's
sounds
do it.
good, and then we'll talk about some other image gens as well.
And while you're getting that set up, real quick, you kind of touched on it earlier. Talk to us a little bit about, maybe not like from whatever point of view, but talk to us from your point of view about what your the differences you see in Midjourney versus Stable Diffusion.
Yeah, well, Stable Diffusion is an open model, which means people can make their own edits to it. Midjourney is closed, so people who have more know-how potentially have the ability to kind of get in there and make their own custom model.
Hmm.
Um, for example, to make one specific to a certain character, or you could feed in your 20,000 drawings that you've been doing your whole life and train it on yourself. I think that's really the main difference. Other than that, they're just models achieving the same purpose.
Hmm.
Um, I think that some that are a little bit different would include Bing Create, which seems to have more of a contextual engine, meaning like if you describe a scene, it actually understands what's happening in the scene, whereas Midjourney and Stable Diffusion are just like copying and pasting clip art, basically, in a fancy fashion. But like it does Midjourney and Stable Diffusion don't understand if you say like a man going. The examples I use usually like a man pointing at a blue ball. Like it might show the guy wearing a blue outfit, blue background. It's gonna have a ball somewhere. It's gonna have a guy pointing, but the guy's not gonna be pointing at the ball because it doesn't really understand.
True.
But more or less, just by naming objects, you end up with the right scene anyway, and that's why people are usually fooled. But for really effective storytelling in the future, we're going to need that, and we're going to need character consistency, like the same person frame by frame, wearing the same
Hmm.
clothes and an outfit that doesn't change as they, go from scene to scene.
Looking forward to it, man. I've been looking forward to it since the end of last year, and I even told my wife, I'm like, it's only going to be a year till they actually put out like a image to video, like frame by frame thing, and it's already happening, and I'm crazy excited. Runway's made such amazing leaps in this stuff.
Well, you got to check out Pika. It's always been really good, but they just came
Okay.
out with a 24 frame per second
Oh,
release yesterday. So It
See,
might be
that's what I
better.
was liking about decoherence is that I could actually up the frame rate on that to make it look better. For those of you guys who don't know, it's not like me and Leo are like old school friends, but the two of us have thrown ourselves madly into image generators, into video generators. I think we were going back and forth on like whether Kyber was better um, than
You were
Runway. Which,
pushing Kyber for a while, but
hey man,
Kyber's gonna be I
I
was
bought
rooting
the
for them as
annual.
well. They'll catch up. They'll catch up.
Look, it's getting there, and I don't. I still like the control that I have with the storyboarding so far. I haven't seen anybody that has that aspect to their image generator, but what I'm
Someone
really waiting
smart will
for is
probably
like,
buy them. That's what I think is gonna happen. That's what I
I
would do.
hope so. I
Yeah.
kind of hope so.
All right, so let's roll with this. So the first things I pulled up were just some simple images, right? Cute animated 3D dog. It's
Mhm.
cute, right? It's 3D. They all have the right numbers of fingers and toes, from what I can tell. So that's good. Simple landscape, right? Like these are all cool, and I think that's what people got excited about. The first time around is like, wow, like this is better than anything a professional could draw.
Right,
But I think again that you end up with a lot of stuff that's not super creative or inspired. You end up with a lot of stuff that has like excessive detail and color is something that was called out to me, and not a lot of like sad, dramatic things. And that's again, I would say just the prompting. Like no one's asking for sad clowns particularly; they're asking for like excited puppies.
right.
Um, but it takes, I think, someone who's more of a creative mind to sort of think of that. So yeah. All
I
right.
agree.
So let's make these a little bit better. So how would I improve this 3D animated dog? One thing I might do is change the aspect ratio for it, or AR, and that's a command you put at the end of a line. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll do that again. You can see I pressed this recycle looking button, and that's to remake the same prompt. Um, so I'm going to add AR 16 to 9. Let's also add maybe a little bit of lighting. So it's cute. So let's have.
And for you guys that are like that are paying attention, maybe wondering like what the numbers are actually in relation to. If you don't mess around with your TV or your monitor enough, 16 by 9 is a very well-known widescreen and or tall screen aspect ratio. If you have a cell phone, you have it. Your cell phone wide is considered 16 as an aspect ratio. The height there is considered 9. Or if you're holding your cell phone tall, it's 16 tall, 9 wide.
Yeah, so the first image or first number is width, in this case 16. So if the first number is bigger, you're going to get a wide image, like a TV. And if the second number is bigger, you're going to get a tall image, like a cell phone held in portrait mode, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
holding it like this, which is 99.9% of the time how I use my cell phone, at least. I don't know about y'all. All right, so we added in
Oh,
some
nice.
lighting, starting to get a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of added a little bit of lighting. It probably also got fun and exciting and pulled that for mood. I think mood that you're trying to inspire can be something else that's really helpful to throw in. So now let's try adding a little bit of mood. So fun and exciting lighting, um, maybe some motion. So jumping. So like I say, jumping for frisbee, and I'm
Okay.
basically hoping I'm going to get lucky here, right? That
Right.
it's even though it doesn't really understand what I'm asking for, it's going to give me a frisbee and it's going to give me a dog jumping. And since
It'll
it's
get
matching
close.
a lot of photos, it's probably going to be really close. But I might also end up with something weird. So let's find out.
Now I'm going to go a little bit. I am not the type. Uh, hopefully, I mean, like if you've been listening to the show, you know that I don't like going slowly. You know that I don't like doing like amateur hour beginning intro into type stuff. I kind of like it if you guys have already been using these tools a little bit and kind of know some stuff about it. That being said, and we might come back to like defining. Oh my gosh, I'll hold it. You go ahead. These look awesome.
So like it kind of looks like it's a dog jumping for a frisbee, right? But like
Uh
image
huh.
one, he's not really looking at that frisbee. I don't know if
Right.
same thing with like image three. I don't know if you all have a dog, but like their eyes on the prize. If you're playing frisbee with a dog, they're
Oh
looking
yeah.
laser at that frisbee at all times. So those two images, not realistic, but look close. These are
Right.
just kind of got lucky.
Hmm.
Again, just you know, this guy seems to be
Number
maybe
two.
missing
Yeah,
a
that's
leg,
like
but
as close as it gets without the disfigurement.
yeah. So, you know, again, it's just kind of copy pasting and doing word search to some extent,
Hmm.
but it gets really close. All right, now let's throw in some photography stuff, which technically you can do for 3D animation, but it generally works better with like an actual photograph. So,
So I was just about to ask, would you go, since it's 3D, would you go for photography or would you lean more towards render engine?
um, I go more for like a render type engine when I'm doing 3D stuff.
Okay.
Um, I think I generally like technically all the same photographic and videographic principles apply in terms of f-stop, which doesn't really exist particularly in Midjourney and Stable Diffusion,
Hmm.
camera lens length, bokeh. You know, really bokeh or blurry backgrounds is the main thing that we'll see
Yeah.
in Midjourney and or sorry, in realistic and rendered images. So like image two has some blurring, image three here has a lot more blurring.
Hmm.
So yeah, let's try a realistic photograph. Because the word order matters when you're prompting, it's good to put your style or type of image you want first to make sure it doesn't get overpowered by other image words in the prompt. Sometimes you end
Okay.
up with a style that's like super overpowering and you have to put that word at the end, but in general,
Hmm.
I strongly recommend putting the type of image you want first so that it doesn't get overpowered. All right, so realistic photograph, a smiling woman with a briefcase. So now let's add in some photo stuff. So people love to use the name of a camera, which kind of works, but the caveat to this is Midjourney doesn't really understand like how the cameras work, how they're different from each other in the way a photographer does. It
Hmm.
only understands from the output. So it
Right.
does know about the difference between a Hasselblad whatever and a Sony whatever and a Canon whatever, but only in terms of image output, which arguably if you're a photographer, that's all you really care about. That's the important part of that whole
Yeah.
process is what you get. But I do find there's somewhat inconsistent results there. In general, you know, really the thing that matters most is if you want a professional looking photograph, you can say professional photograph, like in the beginning here, or just mention really any professional camera. And what
Okay.
that does is that filters out all of everyone's like iPhone photos, and it's only using photos that were taken with professional fancy cameras. And
Right.
while owning a professional fancy camera doesn't guarantee you're going to take good photographs, if you take 100,000 photographs and put them on Flickr, you're probably a professional photographer, right? So
Yeah.
by putting those words in, we're kind of limiting to professional photographers. Now, keep in mind that if you want to get like the camera on an angle and a poorly taken photo on purpose, you
Hmm.
can't really achieve that if you mention a fancy camera because it's limiting its training set to
To
fancy
the output
cameras
of
used
that.
by people who know what they're doing, who don't take crooked photos unless it's like an emergency, right? So, you know, really by what you're doing is you're queuing in on the takers of those photos, the people who took them, right? Not the camera itself.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty interesting. So I like to use a Canon EOS Mark 5D. That's just my go-to. I actually use Nikons personally now, but back in the day I was a Canon guy, and the 5D is super popular with big shot photographers. If you want to get a different photographic effect, I think it's more interesting to ask for a different developer style. So, for example, I might ask for Kodachrome. Right, so Kodachrome is a type of printing method which
Hmm.
technically involves like real film, whereas a Canon EOS Mark 5D is a digital camera. So this request doesn't really make sense, but it doesn't know that, right? So Kodachrome
Right.
gives me like a 1950s kind of cool sort of image. All right,
Very
so we've got
classic. Yeah.
our type of image. So realistic photograph. If I wanted, I could throw in a style here. So like today I did style of HubSpot, which is not a real artistic style, but what it is all the images that have HubSpot in them have like a
Right.
certain pattern, and the engine figures that out, and you end up with a lot of orange, basically. I love orange, so that works for me. We've got our smiling woman with a briefcase. Maybe let's put an emotion. She's not just smiling, but she's joyful. We've got our camera. We've got our print method. I'm going to request bokeh, Bokeh, which is the background being blurred. That happens only at certain f-stops. An f-stop is how open or closed the aperture is. So if you have a very small aperture, like a pinhole camera, for example, which you might have made in like second grade science class, everything ends up in focus, and that's why most like disposable cameras like don't have a focus, because you don't have to, because everything is focused.
Right.
Versus if you do the opposite and the aperture is more open, it lets more light in. That's the good part, but you end up with your background blurred, which people like that, but it's sort of an unintended consequence of the process. But anyway, it makes
Yeah.
for cool photos, right? So we've got our style, we've got a smiling, joyful woman. Maybe let's give a lighting style. So dramatic, red lighting. Maybe let's make it specular.
Shout out, John, by the way.
And let's roll. See what we get.
Everybody that I know, like even my wife, she loves watching me do it for this part. She loves watching the actual generation aspect of it.
Well, you can turn it into an image or a video, which is kind of
Yeah.
fun. People were doing
Yeah,
that
no,
at
I've seen
the
it.
beginning.
I'm starting to at least try. I've seen people do the stuff through the 1900s or whatever, but
Those are fun.
I've started putting together like as close to a like Egypt to now image that I can.
That's cool. So I tried a little bit with this. I did style of Abraham Lincoln and style of Gandhi. I was playing with both of those, I think, yesterday.
Hmm.
And they actually, if you do it as a style, it actually seems to work well for period.
Right.
What's tricky about period is you end up with like color images from 1800. No, you end
Yeah.
up with people with like Glock guns in the 1800. No,
Yep.
right? So it doesn't really
Yep.
know that stuff, but it can learn. All right, so let's look at
Right.
these images.
Okay.
We've got some red lighting. It's not that dramatic. I asked for dramatic lighting, but that's
Hmm.
okay. Um, what's interesting, notice I got a red briefcase in addition to red lighting, and also some people
Yeah.
wearing red. And that's because if we go back to our prompt, it doesn't really understand that the red is just about the lighting. It's just throwing red in here. So a good way to understand what's really happening, you copy your whole prompt and you do shorten. So shorten is a tool designed to help you take an overly long prompt and shorten it. Right, it shows you how you might remove words. This, I think, is
Hmm.
actually less helpful. What's really helpful is show details. Now we get to the money, and it's showing me how much weight each word got and which words were ignored. So, for example, Mark 5D supposedly got ignored altogether. It was just Canon EOS that triggered that particular camera. Bokeh knows is important. It got red lighting, but it also gave me a red briefcase, so that's weird. Briefcase, you can see, was by far the most important thing. And that
Yeah.
makes sense, right? The briefcase is basically the focus of the image.
Yeah.
Even if I hadn't said, like, this is an image about a briefcase, it is kind of an image about a briefcase, right? It's a woman
But
holding a
then it's
briefcase. And
still, yeah. But here's the other thing that I find that is very unintentional. right? But
Mhm.
it's an interesting thing because it's biased within the definitions of words and images inside of image generators, right? So you
Mhm.
said briefcase, and there's really only one briefcase. In the other three images, it looks very much like a handbag or a purse,
Handbag, purse, yeah.
right? So it's a thing where
Image three, she's
it
holding
makes me
it in
wonder,
a weird
like,
way, like she's resting on it, like it's a countertop, not holding
well,
it like
it's
a
a purse
briefcase.
over her shoulder, right? But her body is in the right position, but it's just not an actual it's struggling to change it. In other
Mhm.
words, what I'm trying to get at is like it's almost like a feminist image where the engine wants to put a woman holding a red purse, but you asked for a red briefcase, and so it basically tried to like shove that in the middle, and that's what it came up with.
Well, it's also finding a lot of training data, I would say, where a woman
Mhm.
is holding what we know as humans as a purse, but some person labeled as a briefcase because they were
Right.
moving fast or something, and that throws off the data. Um, but yeah, like you said, because it's a woman. Let's try doing the exact same thing with a man. Let's see if we get more briefcase looking things.
This is going to be interesting to me.
Yeah. And I didn't get a lot of HubSpot, actually. Where's the
No,
HubSpot? Not a lot of
I don't.
orange.
I mean, outside of the first image, like the way that it did the shape for the lighting,
Is that a HubSpot shape, the circle?
it's like it's like the big inner circle of the sprocket, but
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. But if we look, HubSpot came pretty low on the list. If
right,
I wanted it to have more focus, I could have done style of
image weight.
HubSpot from a professional realistic photograph.
Okay, so that's a question I have for you. Do you ever use image weights?
I do use them. Really, I just use it when I'm like trying. The first one's pretty interesting, but
Yeah,
now we've got 4 briefcases, right?
right.
And some of these, I would say number 4 doesn't really look like a photograph to me, but
No,
being
number
picky,
one also like.
it's
I
very
mean, I'm not
interesting.
right there.
What is that, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I asked for dramatic specular lighting, and I got it.
for sure.
um, yeah, I don't know why I did that one. It's very interesting, but yeah, the
Like, I wish it's.
page
This is
is
one of
very,
those things where I actually want to see what's going on in the background.
no option to deblur, unfortunately.
Not yet.
Not yet. I mean, hypothetically, deblurring is something that could be achieved with AI. I'm definitely
Hmm.
interested to see that. The same
Yeah,
as
well,
like
I mean,
magic image enhancement, and what are those, like all the detective shows are like enhanced 7 times, and it's like now
I
I can
was
read the
just
license
about to
plate.
say. I was telling my wife the other day. I'm like, you don't realize I've been using Photoshop since I was in high school. You could never do that
Yeah,
shit
it's
before this
impossible.
last year.
Never.
Was all of you guys that have seen any of those movies, I don't care if it was 2 years ago, where somebody took an image and blew it up, and the blown up image was more detailed than the original. It is absolutely, it was never possible.
You can maybe like tweak out, like you can pull out like
Some
a 2 to
dirties.
4x and get like a
Yeah.
little bit, but not really. Yeah,
No.
that's always been BS. It's like if
Not the
they can
way it
do
was
that, why would we
depicted.
not do that? Yeah.
Right.
So one other thing I want to point out here, I asked for a woman. I got, I would say, 4 white women, maybe 1 Latinx woman.
Maybe. Yeah.
Um, I got 4 white dudes.
Yeah.
So that's definitely an issue. I would
Oh
say
yeah.
that,
No, I've noticed that.
well, so it used to be 100% whiteies, and now it's like 90% white, and you get a few
Yeah.
minorities thrown in here or there. So they're getting better.
Yeah.
I think it mostly has to do with the training data. We can talk about this off screen share. Uh,
Oh.
Let me figure it out. How do I exit screen share? There we go. Yeah, so I think that it has to do with the training data, right? They trained this on a public set, more or less, of photos from magazines, photos from professional image collections. So, like, all the photos of CEOs and doctors are of old white dudes. Like, that's just how the stock images are.
Right.
And the model doesn't know it's innocent, right? So it just thinks that CEO means white, right?
Yeah.
Nobody told it otherwise. So you have to specifically instruct the model. When I tell you CEO, I want you to go with the clothes from those pictures, but then also throw a bunch of black women in there. And the model's going to be like, well, you didn't provide any of those in the source, but all right, I'll try. Right. So you have to tell
Right.
it to ignore the biased data you gave it from biased real world and to
Right.
try to envision like a diverse real world. Right. So it's a task.
I've run into I've run into some stuff that's like really it I don't know, like it just it weirds me out in a bad way because it's like, I know it shows me the errors that are going on in there that are like really, really horrific to me, which is like most recently I tried to make a new which you guys have seen it because I just changed it like not too long ago, new AI profile image for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It took a really long time because it kept putting diamond earrings on me. It kept putting gold chains on me. It kept putting like tattoos
Sorry
on
to
me.
laugh, but like it
Right?
is
And
kind of
it's like no, I'm not like that's the thing. It's like I'm not gonna lie. It's like it basically it tried to turn me into like Lil Uzi or like Lil
funny.
Wayne or something. You know what I mean? And it's like
Did it do that with
okay,
me
well,
when you did my image?
no, not even
Right?
close, man. Like
Yeah.
it's a whole different ball game, right? Because I'm even when I do the chibi characters for the this was just me doing like trying to do a new headshot, right? So
Yeah.
like the realism of it thought that I should have those things, right? When I do the chibi, it's even worse. Like I get these giant gold chain things. I have to put in like no jewelry, right?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, that's to your point. It's hyper right now. It's like hyper these methods because that's the only data that it's got to work off of. And and it's just strange to me that the only other data that it has to work off of is like hyper in the other direction where it's like, okay, well, there has to be a happy medium somewhere in here. Like
Well, they need to talk to some people who have just photos of normal looking black people. Like, I don't know if
yeah,
you know the website nappy.co. I'm a big fan of them.
yeah,
They provide like free stock photos of just normal black people going about their
right.
business day. But it's important to put that data in, and I think a big
It
piece of it
is.
is just like who's in charge of these models, right? Who has access to venture capital money?
Yeah.
I hate to
I mean,
tell you,
early
more white men than any other group, right? So
unfortunately.
they're just not asking the right questions, and it might not necessarily be out of ill will. Just you
No,
look
because
at
I
it
don't think
and
it's
like, they don't look like me, right? They look at it and they're like, oh, that looks okay.
it was funny because one of my first experiences with this was with Dreamlike Art and their engine, like they were just building out their engine, and it was like it was all right. It wasn't that great, but their models for like doing the model they had for doing like anything uh, medium on paper, let's say. So if you were doing crayon or pastels or something like that, looked really good. It looked just a lot more real. It just had a little bit more realism to it. And so I was doing some images for my wife. She was working at still is, um, at a youth center, and we were putting together just some, uh, again, ideation, just some images for them to use and sort of bounce back and forth on, hey, how do we want to set things up? And so I did, kids drawing pictures with colored pencils on paper, right?
Sounds innocent
And
enough. Where's this?
sounds very, yeah, I mean, it was so innocent. And the first few sets that came up were like all white kids drawing with colored pencils. And
Yeah.
then the next sets that came up were just all black kids who were using colored pencils. And I'm like, man, that engine is definitely not picking up the right term or the right definition for the word colored. Like I
Colored?
don't,
Yeah, that's not
yeah.
good. That's not good.
So, you end up with thing, and I remember what really got me was that I talked to the creators of it, and I was like, hey, you guys should really take a look at this because this ain't gonna fly in the U.S. Like if somebody somebody sees this, correlation, you guys are gonna be out like real fast. And they were like, it's not our fault.
That's
They're
one
like,
of the
it's
reasons
you.
it
They're like,
is.
you guys, like you did it, right? Like you guys made the term, you used it in the way you did. So that's it's, the engine's using wiki. Like it doesn't know any different. It only knows what's defined. And it's like, and I told him, I was like, yeah, but it's up to you to actually be the human and
Well,
step
to do
in and
better.
say
Yeah.
that's the wrong thing to associate. We're not going to do that, right?
I mean, we
um
can say like it's a reflection of our society, which it is probably, but
yeah,
we can do
but
better.
that's the thing, is we're trying to change it. Yeah, like if we're going to do better and we're going to change it, we have to start, again, like that's, you ask AI when you work with it, like, hey, what's the best way that we can go forward? And it's like, hey, let's work on removing bias. It's the first thing that it wants to do, is to remove bias, right? So yeah, I mean, that's what's interesting about this stuff, is that it's not just like a generative, so where you thought that this was just going to be like a generative art thing, and oh, we're just going to be playing around with art. It's like all of this, whether it's generative art, generative text, a number of these things, the way in which AI is moving is really, it's making us have to rethink the way that we do things, have to rethink the laws that we've already made, uh, rethink the ideas that we've had on how things apply. I mean, look, man, before before long, one of the greatest moments of history will happen that I have been waiting for my entire life. Um, I keep thinking of, you were saying, and I could go on this one for forever. You were talking about how you didn't think Davis was like close to AGI, and in some ways I agree with you. In other ways, I continually think to myself, okay, but who is making the definition? And even if they are making the definition, isn't it, at the end of the day, it's a subjective definition,
Yeah.
even if you were to make one, right? So the the definition really comes about, or the defining moment, say, happens when no one can tell the difference, right? Like when absolutely no one can tell the difference. And that's basically would be the turning point, I suppose. um like it I can't even say, because people are like, oh well, GPT makes mistakes or hallucinates and stuff, and I'm like, yeah, but you do too, right? And it does it way less often, considering how much it knows. So
Oh
even if
yeah.
it were to hallucinate, it's like I can't even put my finger on what the ratio is, but it's extremely tiny, right? Um, so in a sense, to me, when hallucinations happen, it's like, well, you know, I always boil these things down. It's like, hey, doesn't your computer fuck up sometimes?
Yeah.
Doesn't your phone glitch out sometimes?
I need the new
Yeah,
iPhone or a new phone so bad. I've been
right.
holding out because I didn't want that USB-C. But like,
You shouldn't.
it doesn't charge. LinkedIn's app is terrible. It like crashes all the time on iPhone. I know I should switch to Android. Is what you're gonna say.
Yes, yes, that's exactly what I was gonna say.
I don't know.
I'm
Everyone in
telling.
my life is an Apple person. I'll get so much shit for like switching to green bubbles.
Yeah,
My
but
green bubble hate.
you'll live such a better life, right? And you'll wonder why the hell you ever put yourself under such
Uh,
a communistic, uh I use that word lovingly.
I don't know if
Uh
it's communist. It's more like North Korean, but yeah. But
Oh my god, that
no, I
is
have
too
a
good.
Pixel 4. I like it. It's like my testing device. Yeah, you can use
Oh man.
that.
God, I like, and I fully agree, because like I tell, I give my wife shit all the time because she's an Apple user, and I'm forced to use my Apple laptop right now. Otherwise, I would have a different one. Um, but that, I'm like, well, at least who you are chained to the hip, like who
Yeah,
you
know your
have to, like,
master. As long as
yeah,
you got a
exactly.
good master, I don't object to having a master.
Yeah, it's only when like you have to use a particular cable, you can't use anybody else's. You have to use
Bullshit.
particular chargers, you can't use anybody else's. And she was talking about like, oh, we need to
Hey, I'm
get
a
Apple
shareholder. That
TV.
all sounds to me like retirement savings.
Oh no, 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 not doing it, not doing it. Oh man, but it's been an absolute pleasure having you on today. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for giving up your time, and I definitely want to have you back on. We definitely, we didn't get into it enough. I want to get more and more people involved, and maybe even do something. Well, no, I just want to keep it in Midjourney. And then maybe we'll move on to doing some animated stuff or talking about that down the
Yeah,
road. But
we're getting there real close with that new Pika update. Now the pressure's on for Runway.
yeah,
Maybe we'll
yeah,
get someone else in the game. That's when it's going to get exciting, when there's like 4 or 5 players.
that's what I'm waiting for. Like you said, I agree. I hope Kyber gets picked up by somebody else just to get some more funding behind it, just to like
Yeah.
make that rocket take off even more. We're seeing it all over. People are still just sleeping on Hugging Face. I don't know why, but they're like
Llama
falling
is very
asleep on it.
underwhelming. Code Llama is really good, but regular Llama, I did some testing of it, and I was like, it's much
Now
smaller
it's I
than
mean
GPT.
Hugging Chat's using leveraging Llama 2 now.
Right, they're using
So
Llama 70B, I believe, the 70 billion
yeah,
parameter one. But
yeah.
ChatGPT 3.5 is 175 billion parameters, so
Oh
it
no,
kind
I don't mean like Hugging Chat in and of itself, just like Hugging Face as a
of, yeah,
platform, like in terms of them, like how many applications are getting churned out pretty much on like a weekly basis. Um, I just think that's a very underrated like
oh
breeding
yeah,
ground for AI
people need to talk
breakthroughs,
about
right?
it more. Yeah, they have, and I know we're at time, but they also
Yeah,
have
no.
like a new Arabic language model. There's a bunch of Chinese
Hmm.
language models. So a
Dude,
lot of
I've
interesting
seen
stuff.
people. I was actually just at a DMV recently, and I saw someone using the AI voice language model to do translation because they
That's
spoke
cool.
no English and they had to, obviously work with the person behind the desk in order to do what they needed to do, and it was flawless. It was honestly, it was very cool to watch. It was one of those things where it's like, you know what, this is
The
awesome that we've
future.
gotten to that point. Yeah, where like it's again, I'm very excited because we're getting to that Blade Runner point, man. The closer we get there,
I mean, there's
the
good and bad
happier we're gonna
parts
get.
of Blade Runner.
Look, I know that, but I mean, I just want to. I want to say that I
Take the
lived
guess.
long enough to have made it to that level. Yeah, it
Yeah.
would be cool.
I want to be hunted by a replicant. That's my dream.
I want to see if it's gonna unfold the way that it did in the book. That's all. Like Philip
That's what we
Philip
look.
was so close with so many other things. Have
Yeah.
between him and Mike Judge, it's been a little freaky, right? Because like between Blade Runner and uh, Idiocracy, it's getting real close. It's going to tip one way or the other. We're getting either really close to Wally or we're getting closer to Blade Runner slash Star Trek. But we'll see. Time will tell. And that being said, I will let you get back to the rest of your day. Um, Guys, definitely check this episode out. Definitely follow Leonard. He puts out a new style guide at like almost every day, right? Like every day you have a new style guide.
Yeah, every day, usually both one for Midjourney and one for GPT.
Yeah,
And I think like Thursdays and Fridays, sometimes I take a break and just do one.
yeah, definitely, definitely. I got to find time to get back to it. Eventually, I will. So check out Leo's page. Definitely follow him as much and as often as you can. He drops knowledge constantly every day. Um, I would love to start doing like a group one where it's like, see if I can get you and John on here at the same time and have you guys kind of go back and forth or head to head on a creation.
Yeah, it sounds fun, man. For sure.
All right, man. You have a great one. You guys, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again next week.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone.
Bye.